Hi, and welcome to another Scientology Outside of the Church podcast brought to you by the Advanced Org of the Great Plains and the, what's the other website? The College of Independent Scientology.com. AO-GP.org is the website for AOGP. This is season 11, episode 13. And the topic for today is nothing is perfect. I'm very interested to see where this goes because we never know where it's going to go, and it just ebbs and flows and goes into eddies and then comes back out, and then there's a waterfall, and at the end I'm like, wow, that went really well.
Right.
So
Hang
nothing
on.
is perfect.
Is nothing is perfect actually saying everything's perfect as it is? Because once everything's perfect, then you have nothing.
Well, that would be a complete as isness if everything was perfect, because it would be a complete truth. So, as we were saying in the podcast 2 days ago about in order to control somebody, you have to lie to them. And for anything to persist, there is a lie behind it. What is perfection is what you're saying.
Mm. Because even in a case like that, then the situation is perfect for what it is, yeah?
Is that true, Quentin?
Well, yeah, I kind of take the position that there's different definitions of the word perfect, right? And so one of them could be like without flaws, right? So if you say something is perfect, it means without flaws. The other is something that's completely suitable or suited for a given task. And so when we look at life, when we look at this life as it's unfolding, if something is suited for the given task, then that would be a perfect fit. That'll be a perfect, you know, if I want to screw a screw into the wall, you know, a screwdriver, a Phillips head screwdriver might be the perfect tool for that. Or I could just use a caterpillar. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
that would be the perfect tool for that.
Well, let's look at this as the emanation point. A thetan has no matter, energy, space, or time, but can create it,
Mm.
per the Scientology
Concurrent.
dialectic axioms.
Right.
So a thetan could be said to be without, because the only thing that persists in the physical universe is something that has an alteration to it. A thetan persists, but is not part of the physical universe. So that would mean to me, and this is my quote unquote interpretation of it, that a thetan is as close to perfection as you can get, despite all of the things
Mm.
that they're carrying with them and mocking up. But probably the ultimate perfection is the postulate or postulates of the thetan, because that is what is true for them at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
Does perfection have a sliding scale? Like, and because I'm just thinking about this in my mind, and I think to myself, all right, you pick an apple from a tree, and it's perfect. But then as the apple starts rotting, then it turns into something else, which is perfect for a new environment. It'll
right.
decompose, it'll create nutrient. It becomes a different kind of perfection in a different scenario.
Right. It supplies nutrients for the seed for the new plant to grow. Despite the environment, it's as perfect as it can be, depending on the alkalinity
Mm.
or acidity of the soil that it's in, et cetera, et cetera. And if you look
The
at,
environment, yeah.
yeah, you look at a thetan, it is aiming for perfection at that time as to what a postulate is to
Hmm.
achieve a certain task. It's a decision about something. Now, LRH says absolutes are unobtainable. Is is perfection an absolute or not?
Mm.
Well,
Doesn't
I actually like what he was just saying, that it is more of a changing perception, because if like you said, as a Thetan, you are as close to perfection. You relax, you're already perfect. There's a book called Relax, You're Already Perfect. And you are, as a being, are as close to perfection as there is, right? And yet with your computations and with the way you kind of go through life and any kind of things that happen to you, those things, you're still trying to be perfect. You're still wanting to be right. You're still getting it right as you understand as you understand it, and
Yeah.
all of this, and all of this unfoldment. And so I think that, yeah, I think that perfection is not necessarily a absolute absolute obtainable, but it is always happening as you understand it, based on where you are in consciousness.
right. So if you're playing a game, which this podcast is almost, to me, uh, an extension, a part two of the last one about the lies that you're being told
Hmm.
and that you're operating off of as far as assumptions and expectations. So if you're playing a game, whatever the game is, that game is perfect based off of the assumptions and expectations that you have made with the postulates based off of the information you've had. And if you're playing that game is perfect based off of what you've decided at that
You
time.
think you got it
Even if
down
it's
pat,
uncomfortable,
boy?
Yeah,
even
even
if
if
it's uncomfortable, it's still perfect.
right, what game is uncomfortable? No, what game is? Let me put that a different
Mm,
way. What game
yeah.
would be fun if there wasn't some barrier to the purpose that you were trying to achieve? Because if the game didn't make you uncomfortable, you wouldn't have a barrier, to me.
Hmm.
So there is some uncomfortability, but that is the perfection of what it is that you've decided to put into existence, because that's the
Hmm.
game you've decided to play based off of the information that you have. But the greater game is that you've decided to play this game with players and or yourself. And that's the perfection of it, is that, well, even though I don't know that I'm being lied to, uh, it's perfect because here I am playing that game, which a game is perfect to the degree that there are freedoms, boundaries, and purposes.
Hmm.
So absolutes are unobtainable in the physical universe, but for the Thetan themselves, it's as close to perfection as it's going to get. Otherwise, you wouldn't be playing the game.
Yeah, you would keep on, you would fall into it. It becomes a trap, actually. Yeah, that makes sense. It becomes a trap because as the game becomes less and less perfect, it becomes more and more of a trap to you.
Right.
And then you get stuck in it. How many times have we been in a situation where it's
Yeah.
like, oh my God, this is such a perfect, oh my God, this is perfect. I love this. And then and then it starts to become a trap.
Right.
Boom.
And you're like,
So,
well,
so
I,
could
go
we
ahead.
almost say then perfection is more of a flow? That feeling of flow when things are working in a certain way, would that be
Mm,
true?
I would say so,
I like that.
because your postulates are as perfect as they can be, because nothing occurs in the physical universe without your postulates. So isn't that as close to
Mhm.
perfection as you're going to get? Because whether you want to play that game or not, you are a willing participant in that game.
Mhm.
Yeah. And depending on your point of view, if you do have some kind of adversary, you could still maintain your perfection while handling that as well.
Right, because you're already in the perfect game.
Even if it is challenging. Yeah. But
Yeah.
not all challenges have to be painful. They just have to be something that requires a way to win.
Yeah. Because if the boundaries are too great, you will repostulate something else or unmock that game. And we talked about this in a podcast a couple of weeks ago. You know, you can reform the game and unmock the postulate. That's how auditing works. So
Yeah.
you're creating perfection, and then you go, maybe this isn't the game that I want to play.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to unmock that postulate, which is pretty easy because considerations are senior to the physical universe per the Scientology axioms. So
That's right.
you consider that you're no longer going to play that game, and that podcast was brought up. Artie's the one that came up with the kernel for that podcast. Is okay. This is the game that I'm playing, but I no longer want to play this game. So you have to unwind it, which is change your considerations and go, I no longer want to play it. I'm going to put something in place. And then you end cycle on start, change, stop, which is create, survive, persist, destroy. And then you go from one perfection to the other. So that leads us to act 2 in this podcast is what does perfection consist of for a being? And I'm not saying that in the context of games, but
Mm-hmm.
what kind of perfection are you striving for, and why? What is
Question.
perfect?
Well, that would be truth. That would be exact time, place, form, and event. That would be everything that is needed for it to be, to as is, to have an isness to it. Time, place, form, and event. And when we can consider that as a thetan, when you can consider that, okay, I know exactly what, who, why, all the form, all the stuff that kind of goes into that scene. And when you have it, it it vanishes. It as is. It becomes this expression of perfection. And now it no longer can just stick there in your space. So you can have the experience. Oh, this is so good. You can have the experience without the aberration. You can have the experience of life, the things that happen in life, the stuff that is life. But once you fully can perceive it and see it as is, once you can fully have, okay, I now know exactly what that was that happened there and da 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 da. It now just has to, boom, has to go out of this, out of your space into the nothingness from which it came.
Mhm.
And then you can say, oh, well, that was a thing, that was an experience, but now I can move on. Now I can have something different. I can mock up something else. It's beautiful. Perfection really is the goal of you as a being. You want everything to, you want the truth of all. You want the truth of everything. We want the truth that is. And once we get the truth and we fully know it, the truth makes you free.
Mhm. In
Isn't that beautiful?
in and freedom is part of the definition of games. Freedoms, boundaries,
That is purpose. Yeah.
and purposes.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at this planet and you go, this is the perfect prison planet. It is perfection in the way that it contains beings and keeps them playing these perfect games of aberration. I think we see that from day to day. And LRH looked at this and went, well, it is a perfect game, but is that the game that these beings really want to play, or should they put their perfection elsewhere?
Is it that what happened in the Matrix where the architect was like, oh yeah, the first iteration was too perfect. You guys wouldn't accept it.
Right, right.
Maybe, yeah.
So
Yeah.
the perfection had to have some flaws in order to
It
make
had
it
to have it had to have some alter isness in order to make it work,
right.
to make it persist.
Right, which is, it's a moderation of the boundaries in order to make it Because if something is too good to be true, what does a thetan do?
Oh yeah, they
Use
reject
it
it.
up.
Right. And you know, that's the day-to-day explanation that everybody says, well, if it sounds like it's too good to be true, then it is true, which means you can't have it.
You've
Mm.
already defeated
You know,
yourself before you've even
i-
started.
in
Yeah.
the Dianetics axioms, I think it's axiom 190. Let me see here. Axiom 190. Happiness, where is it? I just saw it. Happiness consists of the act of bringing alignment into hitherto resisting plus or minus randomity. And so happiness actually is when you can bring alignment into this hitherto resisting plus or minus randomity. So you got all this randomity, all this crazy stuff going on in one's world, whatever that looks like. And to be able to bring alignment into that where before it was resisting alignment, before I couldn't get it together. I couldn't figure this thing out. I couldn't put it all in and make it work. And to be able to do that finally, ah, does a Dayton feel accomplished? Do you feel happy,
Mm.
right? And so happiness consists of the act of bringing alignment into hitherto resisting plus or minus randomity. Isn't that something?
And I think that's where I was coming from with the flow side of things as well. Because imagine you've got like scattered Lego pieces everywhere, and then you put them all into alignment and you create something, and you're like, yeah,
Right.
that's what I've
Mm,
created.
Right, because a thetan puts order into disorder. That's what a
Mm.
thetan
yeah,
does.
that's what it does.
Yeah.
All you do in the physical universe through your perfect postulates is you're moving messed around, and that's the shallowest way I can put it, but you're moving it around, you're reforming it like a chemist does in putting chemical compounds together in order to create a desired result in the physical universe. So now that you have something else, whether it's a recipe for a meal, whether it is digging a hole in the backyard so that you can put a pool in and putting the pool in, or it is growing your body and changing that body to the degree that now you can mess yourself, move the body around. Now you can assimilate information by taking that information and applying it into the physical universe to further move messed around through the postulates of this, or the perfection of how and what game you want to play. But you have to move messed around in the physical universe in order to achieve that, to attain happiness. And happiness is to the degree that your ethics are in and you are on purpose of the perfection of your postulate, which is almost
In purpose, yeah.
almost redundant, but it has to be said that your perfect postulates are whatever perfection is whatever you're living right now. That's what you agree to.
Mm,
That's what you accept because you put it there. You wouldn't be there in the first place.
that's right.
So
That's right.
plus or minus randomity is said either way. If there's too much or too little, it puts a thetan to sleep. So
Hmm.
you're looking for the optimum randomity that allows you to play that game, and you go, okay, this is too fast or this is too slow. I need to alter my postulates or change the game that I'm playing to the perfect randomity for you. That's how you see people getting overwhelmed, is there's too much randomity or too
Too
little.
much, yeah.
But that randomity is the motion of the mess that you have put out there as your postulate. And like he says, the one thing is being there and communicating, but the only other way you can be wrong is under or overestimation of effort in the
Yep.
game, the perfect game that you're playing. And you go, wait a minute, this isn't my definition of perfection. I need to repostulate this and unmock the prior postulate in order to get the amount of randomity that I want, that I can handle. And the more auditing you
Mm.
get, the more randomity you can accept, the less randomity you can accept, and grant yourself beingness for what it is that you created as perfection at that point in time on the time track in the physical universe.
You know, I think this is really interesting because basically what I just come to understand about what we're saying is that the reason why auditing works is because auditing allows us to go back and to clear up or realign, maybe that's probably a better word of saying it, to realign that plus or minus randomity in our life, in our minds, in our experiences. And we go back and we realign that soul. And the further we go back, the earlier areas, once they're realigned, the later areas, the ones closer to present time, can realign even faster. And so if you got a present time problem, right, you go in and you kind of do what you got to do right now in the physical universe to deal with your present time problem. But when you get in session, when you get some auditing and you go back and you line up, you go back and you line up or realign that plus or minus randomity on your time track, the present time problems in your current situation, in your current life actually clear up. Your relationship with your parents gets better. Your relationship with your boo gets better. Your life gets better. Your health gets better. The things in your present life, present time problems start to actually clear up because you were able to sit down and we were able to go back to earlier incidents that you needed to realign that plus or minus randomity, find the perfection, as it were, find your happiness, find that thing that makes it make sense for everything that you are at this point in your life as a being, and you say, "Oh shit, that's me.
Yeah.
I did that. I, I mocked that up. I figured that out. I made that happen. Okay, damn, I'm powerful."
Yeah. At the
Funny, many,
Go
many
ahead.
years ago, I was learning, I was getting some lessons for the bass guitar. This is probably maybe 20 years ago, maybe even longer. And I was giving myself such a hard time because I was really struggling at some of the techniques. And my music teacher said this to me. He said, "Don't worry about the perfection, strive for awesomeness." And it's after hearing that, it got me thinking about perfection quite a lot because we could put ourselves into so much pressure aiming for the most perfect result, the most comfortable result when we're striving for things. And so I kind of realized with that statement, awesomeness versus perfection, I thought, well, if I aim for awesomeness, perfection is bound to happen. And it's not until perfection has happened that you can actually realize it was perfect. So the perfection is the recognition and recognizing that perfection happened is post the event.
Mm-hmm.
It's not actually during the event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you don't recognize perfection until you've achieved your goal to completion. And then, in the cycle, start, change, stop, destroy, it's the destroy part that has the perfection attached to it.
Yeah, because you have an idea for perfection, but getting the physical universe to respond is quite another. Like with musical chops and everything like
Mm.
that. Because
Yes.
when I went to Jamie Font's music school, the first thing we did was make the metronome disappear by clapping our hands
Yes.
from
That
40.
is perfection.
Yeah, from
That
40.
is actual perfection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
40 beats per minute to 240 beats per minute with your hands and every varying degree in between.
But here's the funny thing, because
Wow.
when you can start hearing the metronome again, now you're out of perfection. And the
That's right.
funny thing is, it's not until you recognize that you can't hear the metronome, then you fall out of perfection. And so you've got to let go of all that stuff,
Yep.
remain in the flow of it to have the perfection. Because the moment you recognize things are perfect, all of a sudden you can hear that metronome.
Right. And
It's crazy.
Jamie had a letter from LRH on his wall in his office uh, down in the valley on Ventura Boulevard above Red Lobster and Subway. And the letter from LRH said, "Congratulations on creating a bridge for musicianship. Very, very well done." And it hit me. It hit me that my drum teacher, Tom Mendola, was he was the husband in the first married couple film that the church produced, and he was my drum teacher, and he kept telling me, "Stop thinking with the tech, because you're altering it by using it as a via." And I said, "Well, what we're doing here is we're as-ising the metronome. We're mocking it up on top of itself to go away. And that is what the perfection is." He says, "Yeah, but you're making it too complicated." And once he told me that, and I took that out and I just did it, I achieved perfection. I said, it's impossible
Wow.
to do all of these particular steps, from 40 beats per minute to 240 beats per minute. It's impossible to do that, and I kind of felt like Luke Skywalker talking to Yoda, kind of a thing. But he said, "No, it's not." I said, "Tom," and this was the funniest thing I ever heard. I said, "Tom, what is the point of doing 40 beats per minute? It is agonizing, because the lower beats per
Yes.
minute are where you
Yes.
see the most efficacy
Wow.
of improving your ability to do the faster beats." And I said, "Tom, there
Yes.
isn't a song out there that's 40 beats per minute." And without calm lag, Tom says to me, "Unchained Melody" by the Righteous Brothers. And I just felt
I
like,
just
all
had
right,
a
go ahead.
yeah, go. I just had a realization because we've got to learn the skills, yeah, and then you've got to apply the skills, right? So if you've learnt the skills around the metronome and you can still hear the metronome, you're still in the learning phase.
Yeah.
You haven't quite applied it yet. But then when you apply the tech and you apply the skills, it's not you're not in training anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're still messing up, you still can't hit that 40 BPM, which is quite slow. Um, you're still in training. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
until you achieve that, now you're applying the training.
Mm-hmm.
Once you're at that point, the training has been applied. And it's the same goes with the tech we're learning through independent Scientology. Like if you're still messing it up and you're still going over all the tech in your mind as you're trying to apply it, you haven't quite applied it yet because it's still in your mind. But the moment your training disappears from your mind and you actually apply it as part of your life, now you're actually applying it.
Yeah.
You're operating at it. Yeah.
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 And we're talking, and the reason why I brought this up is because you're looking at this plus and minus randomity, and it was so difficult to get that 40 beats per minute
Yeah.
down, to make it vanish and as is, because what you're doing, and Jamie talked about this in a reference in the course, is it's that magic carpet ride that you have
Mm.
when you're playing with others, and you have this freedom where everybody knows what the time is, because the time is being created by the beat. And so you get this suspension as a musical trio, or however many members of it is, to where you have this freedom because you're creating time, you're creating mess when you perform a piece of music, or if you're just improvising. Everybody knows where everybody's going to go before they even get there, and they're creating it ahead of time, and they're all on the
Mm.
same wavelength. And if there's a change in tempo, everybody knows it. And that's
Hmm.
that's what a thetan is doing, is they have this magic carpet ride of perfection, which the basis of it is rhythm.
Mm.
And
And if you're going against that rhythm, then things are out of whack. Because what's interesting, when you're learning time with a metronome, the metronome is merciless. It doesn't care if you're in,
yeah,
if you're out, if you're on, it just doesn't care.
right.
And it'll let you know if you're not on par with it, if you're not in resonance with it. It'll
Yeah.
let you know if you can hear it or not. Yeah, that's a really good example.
Yeah, and that's where you see in jazz free time,
Mm.
because you're creating the time or you're not creating the time, but the agreement is there is no time, because it is free time, because you have a complete and absolute comprehension of the fact that time is whatever we want to create it out to be, and that is messed based off of rhythm. LRH talks about in the art series that rhythm, if it's unpredictable, if a person is listening to music and they're listening to jazz and they're used to whatever their music is, the reason why they like that kind of music is it's because it's predictable for them. And when it is not predictable and they cannot manifest it and keep track of it, they're made wrong and they don't want to listen to that music. The same
Wow.
holds true to life in the physical universe and being a thetan. Is if you can't predict, then perfection is out and you have yourself fooled as to what perfection really is. You're just believing the consideration that this is perfection because you have no free time.
Mm.
It's
And
interesting
it's
because
interesting.
as you got, oh, sorry, go
Go, go,
ahead.
go.
All right.
They go.
I was going to say that as you talk about this rhythm, you use the word rhythm. Ellery says in the axioms, Dianetics axiom number 14, he said theta working upon physical universe motion must maintain a harmonious rate of motion. And so, as a Thetan, you must maintain a harmonious rate of motion in order to actually act upon the physical universe. Isn't that something? Like you
Mm.
actually have to be in sync with your floor, with the with the wall, the door,
Yeah.
the car, the
Yeah.
whatever. You actually have to be at a harmonious rate of motion in order to even interact with that physical item, that physical mess, right? And so what ends up happening is that if any part of you is so aberrated, so distorted, so messed up, so out of sync, right? That you get out of sync with the physical rate of motion in your own life, boom, car crashes, boom, money messed up, boom, life body going haywire, boom. Because theta acting upon or working upon the physical universe motion must maintain a harmonious rate of motion. You got to have the harmony in your life.
Right. So what's happening
And
is,
like the metronome, it's merciless. It doesn't discriminate at all.
yeah,
At all.
right. So
Yeah.
if you're out of present time, and that's what the objectives are
Yeah.
for, is to get a person in present time in the physical universe, you're out of sync.
Mm.
You're out of sync.
Wow. Wow. So accident after accident, situation after situation, boom after boom.
Right.
Like,
Because
that's crazy.
you're at another point in time, which is not the point in time that is really going on right now. So you're clapping to the metronome at 40 beats per minute, and the metronome is at 45. So you're
Mm.
going to be off, and that's why it's thank you. So
Hmm.
you have to be in sync with what it is that you're actually living in, as opposed to what you're counter creating.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. And I'm pretty sure off memory, the Earth's frequency is like 7.85. That's a pretty slow rhythm.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
it's I mean, then you get into sound and you get into the electromagnetic spectrum, beneath that and everything, and what you can see with a body and what you can see as a thetan without a body or with a body, what you can perceive, what the wavelength of this is. And you see all this in the new age stuff about, you're at a different wavelength and everything. And I mean, it's all pretty much the same thing. But the thing is that your postulates don't have any wavelength until you create it.
Mm-hmm.
So they could be smooth like a sine wave, or they could be triangular, or they could be square shaped, or whatever. And if you're out of sync, you've got two waveforms going over each other, and all you have is a bunch of noise, and that's not
Well, then you have a chord.
right. And then you have a chord, and that's why the tone scale has harmonics. You have one tone level, but that tone level has harmonics of the other, because that is ARC, and that is the perfection of ARC, just like you have on a piano keyboard. So these two things, they intertwine, and of course, obviously, the human ear can only hear so much, but a thetan can hear the entire bandwidth because they are capable of creating it. And if they couldn't create it, they couldn't hear it. If you're out of sync in present time, you're not actually hearing what's going on. You're hearing something else, quote unquote, as a thetan.
Mm-hmm.
So perceived perfection as opposed to perfection, they're kind of the same thing, but it depends on whether you're out of sync with the physical universe as a thetan, and you just need to get into sync with it, and that is your change of postulate.
And that's how you change it.
This is
That's
good.
how you change your life. That's how you literally can change the physical universe, because you understand that those harmonics, you understand the frequency, you understand the optimum motion that is being created by you as a thetan. Ellerate says at Axiom 24 that the establishment of an optimum motion is a basic goal of reason. And so if you want to live a life of reason and understanding and truth and logic, if you want to live a life of with reason, the establishment of an optimum motion is a basic goal of reason. And so when you look at your life, and as life is going haywire, life is all over the place or whatever, something's out of motion. Something's not optimum here. Some activity, some actual, I love how he says motion, because I think that's really important. Some actual activity or motion is out of order. It's discordant. You talked about the chords. Something is discordant. And so he's like, "Ooh, that ain't the right note." Have you ever been in a situation like you in a relationship and like, "Ooh, that ain't the way you talk to me. That ain't the right note."
Right.
I don't tolerate that sound.
Right, because to have musically speaking, we're using this as a metaphor in a comparable magnitude. To have a note, okay, you can play a note, but it's just a note until you have another note to compare it to. How far apart? What is the frequency of that note? And if that rhythm is incorrect for you, it makes you wrong. Just two beats. Okay? That note has a beat. A beat is it's not a beat until there's another beat with it. That's what makes time, is you have to have a rhythm. And if your rhythm is countering the physical universe, something that you've already agreed on that is persistent because there's a lie behind it, that's why it's there. The beat that you create with the counter note from the physical universe gives you plus or minus randomity. I hope people can follow this, because if you just have boom, what do you got?
You just got both.
Boom.
A
That's
moment
it.
in time.
Yeah, you got a moment in time. That's it. And that if you want to look at that as a picture, an engram, or a secondary, or a lock, okay, or a postulate.
Actually, Actually,
boom.
actually, bump would be like they'll be like dead, boom, dead. Without another beat, without another heartbeat, without another rhythm, without another action or movement or motion, you don't have any life.
Right.
It's just
Without some flow.
Right. You don't have any comparable magnitude. But then when you have two beats, you go, okay, boom, boom. Ah, interesting.
yeah. Oh,
Uh,
now he's living.
now he's living. Okay. Now what? Is it four beats to a bar? Boom, 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 boom. Or is it 8 or 16 or 32? Or
Mhm.
wait for it, is it an odd time? Are there 7 beats to the bar? And that's where you get into that's something difficult. I don't know that I can predict that.
Yeah, even when you just said that, I was like, that's not I can't tolerate that. I don't understand that.
Right.
But it's funny, there's so many songs out there that have those odd beats that sound completely normal. And it's not until you start counting them that you realize, oh, hang on, that's not quite a straight beat.
Right. So you're
Even if
dealing
it's off, even if
yeah,
it's an odd number, it still works.
right. If a tapestry is too busy, you go, what's that? But
Mm.
if it's too complex or it's not complex enough, it's all a matter of rhythm. And that's what the art series is art and color and how all these things go around and how they intertwine with each other. But you have to have a comparable magnitude in order to know that's the right rhythm for me as far as the perfection of my postulates, the randomity or the minus randomity, 40 beats per minute versus 240 or 100. In popular music, it is an industry standard and it is verboten to do anything else. Any song that will sell, any song that has sold in popular music is 120 beats per minute. Any. That is the
Really?
yes, 120 beats per minute. Anything
Wow.
Beyonce produces, it's 120 beats per minute. Now that's the accepted, that is the industry standard for this. You have the A&R guy. I don't hear a song. Why? It's
Oh
not.
wow. So
It's
I just Googled this. I'm sorry, finish your flow.
yeah. It's not 120 beats per minute. We can't release this as a single.
So Wrecking
Interesting.
Ball by Miley Cyrus. Wrecking Ball by Miley Cyrus. DJ got us falling in love again by Usher. Dreams by Fleetwood Mac. Uh, let's see. Amy Winehouse. All of these really. You Should Be Dancing by the Bee Gees. All of these very popular songs at 120 beats per minute. Wow. Rumor Has It by Adele.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
It is
That's
interesting.
fascinating.
And that is considered perfection because that is something that everybody can understand and can duplicate. They can duplicate that, but if it's something else, it's considered not mainstream. That is the perception of perfection as far as beats go for music. So what does that tell you about beings?
Wow. I just I'm floored. I'm floored. I guess it tells you that we find this optimum, this perfect beingness, this perfect existence, this perfect way of doing things, and we try to make it make sense. And to the degree that we cannot or have not been able to do that, that's where we start to kind of feel off somewhere.
Right. Right, but that is the accepted norm for a tolerance of perfect randomity. And this is what drives people's emotion. This is what why do you listen to
Mm,
music? Because it's pleasurable in some way. Whatever it
right.
is, whether it's a ballad or, you know, unrequited love song or complained about love or you should be dancing or whatever, 120 beats per minute. So that's the perceived perfection, and I want to put this within the proper framework. That's the perceived perception of this planet, of the optimum randomity. Now, what would you say that the tone level of 120 beats per minute is? Now, it's no coincidence that the tone scale is called the tone scale. Scale,
Mm-hmm.
tone, scale. It's the same words that is used, wait for it, in music.
Mm.
Tone
So,
scale.
would your heart rate? So I'm guessing your heart rate would also be affected by your emotion, wouldn't it? So if you're angry, then your heart rate would be a lot higher than your standard. When
Yeah.
you're relaxed, your heart rate lowers. So depending on your tone, do you think there's a relevance there to do with your heartbeat as well?
Yeah. Now, wait for it. This might blow our listeners' minds as well. Do you know what the minimum beats per minute, like on
40 beats per minute,
my Apple Watch, is for you to burn calories that you need to maintain to burn calories? You know what it is?
120 beats per minute.
120 beats per minute.
Yeah, I was just looking at this. To maximize your running cadence, you got to start listening to a playlist of 120 beats per minute songs while you're working out, and you will actually get the perfect rhythm for your heartbeat to actually lose weight.
Interesting. Interesting. I love it.
I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna start losing weight listening to DJ's Got Us Falling in Love Again. DJ got us falling in love again.
So
Wow.
my question is
Uh,
how much is the optimum randomity based off of that beat per minute and that considered perception because of the body?
mm,
Right. I think it's right. I think that considered perception. Well, I think no, the body gets its effect from that considered perception of that optimum motion. So the thetan, I think I already said it before, the thetan interacting with the physical universe has to find that optimum motion.
Right.
That's how it works.
Yeah, and that's the gold standard for perfection with a body in the physical universe, both in hearing and in heartbeat. I'm sure that there are a ton of other correlations, and we could get into the numerology and all of that stuff of it as far as what that's based off of, but that is considered to be perfection when it comes to heartbeats, it comes to music. What else is there? 120 beats per minute. With John Travolta walking down the street at the beginning of Saturday Night Fever, he's walking at 120 beats per minute with that paint can in his hands.
mm. Interesting. And even in the pure, maintaining a heart rate of 120 beats per minute after the vitamins for at least 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And so not only sonically but visually, I can watch any drummer with the sound off and I can hear what it is that they're doing and what they're playing without hearing any sound at all because of what I'm seeing, because I'm so familiar with that metronome. Now, take a look
Mm.
at that with your postulates.
Yeah. Do can you wait a minute. Can you without any result, without any how do I say this? Without seeing it, can you know it to be so? Can you know, can you hear it? Can you see it? Can you feel it? Can you observe it as a being before it shows up in the mess universe? That's how we create. That's how that's the power of the imagination. That's how we create. You can see it, feel it, experience it, oh, da, 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 and you know it so. You know it
Mm-hmm.
to be so
Mm-hmm.
as a being. Yeah.
So you have that little thought bubble right before you make the postulate, and you go, ooh, ooh, no, 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 because what you're doing is you're looking at the randomity of the tone scale, and you're going over to grandma and grandpa's and listening to them talk about their body problems. You're like, ooh, ooh, that's
Mm.
no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. As a kid, and you fall asleep. No, mom, I'm gonna stay with dad. You go see grandma and grandpa. That.
Right.
So if you're creating postulates, you have to take into consideration what 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 is the randomity involved in it, and can you accept it, like you said with the earlier axiom? Because if you're doing that, you're counter creating your own havability of what that's going to feel like, what that's going to look like, what you can you predict it, can you not predict it? If you can't predict it, you don't want any part of it. But sometimes we make postulates that are counterproductive to what we can have and what we can't have, to what is conceived as the perfect or perfection of what we can have. So
Mhm.
having this, doing this, being this is a perfection of postulate, a perfection of randomity, a perfection of what you can have and what you can't have. And if you counter create that, now you have a dissonance.
Mhm.
And that's why you're unhappy.
Wow. Well, I choose to be happy.
Yeah. What does that beat consist of? What's
Yeah, that's
Um,
right.
uh, that
Go
uh,
go for a
that that
run,
perfect
it's a
heart rate up.
perfect life for me. That
right?
perfect life for
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
What that song by Pharrell Williams that was in
Because I'm happy
that
alone if
that
you.
that is considered to be perfection of what happiness is
Mm,
in the industry.
yeah.
It is a gold standard of happy is this song.
Happy as a frog.
Isn't that interesting how it's conveyed, and it's 120 beats per minute. That's that's
See?
that's happy.
Dun, dun, dun,
So that
wow.
aligns with perfection of that happy isn't on the tone scale per se, but yet it is. Interesting. Food for thought.
Wow.
Because I'm
Yeah,
happy.
interesting.
And
That's really good, guys.
yeah,
Yeah.
and isn't it funny when you go into a store and they know you're their target market? So they play songs from your generation and your era. If you're in your 50s and you go into a store and they're playing songs from the 80s, what does that do? Makes you happy,
It makes me happy.
which
Yeah.
makes you
Yeah.
want to spend
Yeah.
more freely, and they get a desired result. You can do the same thing in your own life with your own created perfection and your own rhythm and your own beat.
Wow. Okay. I need to pull my playlist together. I need to get some happy music for me going so I can start to create my happy life with my perfect plus or minus randomity with the perfect experience, and I can go in auditing go back and clear up any misalignment of emotions in my past and get a perfect alignment of my emotions in my present so I can have a wonderful future.
Right.
Amen. Have a nice day.
Right. And you can now deal with a lot more randomity and a lot more games because you can tolerate a faster rhythm of your own creation because you put it
Mm,
there. That is the satanic perfection that we are all striving for. Is I need a lot of randomity to be happy. It's way faster than 120 beats per minute. So, again, the music thing is just a comparable magnitude, a metaphor for what we're talking about. And I really hope that people understand this and realize that they are their own conductor of perfection.
Mm, I love it.
So, for Arthur, Quentin, and myself, we hope you've enjoyed this podcast and it's opened your eyes to what perfection is and what it is not, and how you can create it using independent Scientology concepts, the axioms, and so forth, and align it with your own song that you create. And we're getting in the final days of our half off bridge package special. Contact us 816-355-4606. That's +1 if you're out of the United States. And we will get you going to where you can be your own perfect conductor and your own composer of your future track. 816-355-4606. Visit us at ao-gp.org or the College of Independent Scientology.com. And we will get you going, get you educated, get you up the bridge, and get you happy.
Happy.
Namaste, and we love you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Stay awesome.
Peace.
Bye bye.